small change. Twice in the minutes, we said the committee voted unanimously in favor of the motion. I would like to add in just a comma and put in that we voted 9-0, so that when someone's reading these, they'll see that it was the entirety of the committee that did that. So in 2 spots, this is at 8:54 p.m. The second line right under that reads, the committee voted unanimously in favor of the motion. I would like to add a comma, 9-0, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down. Again, there's a second vote we took. This is to, it was a new motion that was made recommending the town to replace the 1977 seal with the 1913 seal. And it reads, committee voted unanimously in favor of the motion. Again, I would like to add a comma, 9-0. So with that amendment, again, I'll entertain a motion, any motions to accept the minutes?
I make a motion to accept the minutes of June 22nd.
As amended?
As amended.
And may I have a second? All those in favor of accepting the minutes, please raise your hand. Let the record show that was a unanimous vote. Let's go to the report, any committee correspondence. I haven't received anything. I looked this afternoon. I hadn't received any other correspondence. I haven't seen us receiving any other correspondence. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say?
I just want to say one thing.
Sure.
I just wanted to explain my vote at the last meeting because I didn't quite feel that way when I came into it. I was torn really more about the historical aspect of the seal because it highlighted our 100th town and the bell tower and a nationally famous person that actually gave Westborough a little presence in the country. But in the end, seeing going back to the original seal, I probably was for that to begin with, kind of in the beginning, like I would be happy to have that seal. So I was happy that that was kind of the way everybody else felt too, to just go back to the original seal. And so that was really my feeling. It is a good choice, and I hope that it goes that way, town meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? I have something I do want to read for the record. So if you just bear with me, this takes a couple of minutes, okay? I voted to retire the 1977 Westborough Town Seal and return the, let me again, Eric, I have a copy of this, so I'll send it to you so you don't have to.
I would give it to Ian, because I'm
Sure.
making this.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, okay, but I'll make a note that you're reading this and that you'll be sent a copy of it.
Great.
Yeah.
So I voted to retire the 1977 Town Seal and return Westborough to the 1913 seal because the town seal imagery is visually too busy, and the cotton gin should not be the sole representation of such a vibrant community's heritage. The 1913 seal represents town unity, and I'd like to explain. Having listened to different comments, opinions, and discussion of a potential return to the original 1913 seal, there were numerous pieces of feedback given to this community. Residents spoke favorably about the 1913 seal. The 1913 seal showed there was interest between residents who wanted to keep the 1977 seal and the residents who wanted to eliminate it. This difference had to do with the town's heritage and what living in the community represents. Residents who wanted to keep the 1977 seal said that if it was to be replaced, that a return to the 1913 seal was acceptable. And likewise, among some residents who wanted to eliminate the 1977 seal, a return to the 1913 town seal was expressed as a feasible alternative. I recognize the comments from residents who wanted to create a new town seal and the comments made by members of this committee not to shut out other potential ideas for a new town seal. However, when considering the cost to return to the 1913 town seal and the proposal to move away from the 1977 town seal in a slower, methodical way when the item, the machine, etc. is replaced, it makes the most economic sense to make this change in this manner. Early in this process, I remember a remark by Westborough Select Board member Shelby Marshall concerning a proposal to make a change about another divisive community issue. At that time, the Select Board member said the community was not ready to make a change and that a change would only divide the community. Select Board member Marshall's words resonated with me and has guided my decision-making with the town seal issue. I wanted to discover if there was a way to have the town seal review committee make a decision that could unify the community and not divide it. I think that returning to the 1913 seal, a 109-year-old symbol of Westborough, unifies the community. The 1913 town seal speaks to the rich heritage and retires a town seal that has a symbol on it which causes divisiveness in the community. The 1913 town seal is a circle and has a circle within it. It represents unity, and it symbolizes the center of the town, which is the Westborough Rotary. We had residents recommend the Westborough Rotary as a current symbol of the community. It would be rare for a resident not to pass through the Rotary when residing in this community. The Rotary is a symbol of Westborough being a crossroads community and historically as the 100th town accepted by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I recommend the town continue to recognize the ingenuity of Eli Whitney, perhaps at the Westborough Town Library. And I recommend that the 1913 town seal and the 1977 town seal images be placed on the town's website under Facts About the Town of Westborough, with a historical explanation providing context for both seals. It's for these reasons that I voted to retire the 1977 seal and replace it with the 1913 town seal in this manner. And thank you for listening to me about that. With that said, does anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Any comments or statements? Why don't we move on? So we're going to go through the final edits part. It lists on the agenda as parts 1 through 5. I did add a section, and I emailed this to you a few days ago about adding a section about costs. And if you don't like it, fine, we can change it. I thought it was better to put it and be pronounced about it in the actual report. I also added a recommendation from the committee about, which I just referenced in my comments about about Eli Whitney and what we could do about that also, because I do think it's something that maybe we might need to discuss. So with permission of the committee, what I thought would make sense is that we start to go through the report one more time, unless someone has a better suggestion, a better way to do this. Now you have hard copies in front of you. If you want to follow along in the Google Doc, you can do that also. And as we get towards the end of the document, because I know John Arnold's here tonight, so as we get to the end of the document, John, at the last meeting, we had a few questions about wording,
Yep.
about how something might be
it.
placed on the article and how to go about phrasing all of that.
Yep.
So when we get through that part, I don't think it'll take us long to go through this first part.
Okay.
But with your permission, does that all make sense to everybody to do it this way? So, do you want to listen to me read this, or do you want to share the work and someone else read it instead? Do you want to do it? Would you like to do it that way?
Well, we read, is there a way, and we read it word for word last time, I don't know if that's necessary to do again. Do we have it all recorded, like where we were going to change it? I mean, last time we read all 4 pages aloud and
We
stopped
did.
along the way. I don't see the necessity of doing that a second time, personally. The changes were somewhat superficial, but I'm open to what others see, maybe, just crossing our Ts and dotting our Is here.
My only thought about going through it a second time was just that it's been a few weeks, it would give us a chance to just revisit it. That was my thinking on it.
Yeah.
unless the will of the committee is to not do that.
I guess I would make an assumption that when you sent this second draft out, that folks have read it. And unless something jumped out at anybody, Eric may be right, we don't have to go through it again word for word.
Sure.
Um,
What if we do it this way?
Maybe just the cost.
Just the cost?
Yeah,
Okay.
the new section that you.
So just to make sure we're clear then, just to follow also what we had said we would do on the agenda. So in part one, the background of the Westborough Town Seal Review Committee, is there any, in that section, is there anything there that's jumping out at anyone? And as you're going through it, if you haven't had a chance to read it, you can speak up and we can go back to it. How about we do it that way? Is that fair enough?
That sounds good.
Okay, all right. So if we get down into the mission statement.
I just have one thing on the background.
Mhm.
It seems repetitive to list titles in the second paragraph and then specific titles in the next paragraph.
Okay,
It just occurs to me that we could list all the people appointed and then call out the co-chairs and the
Yeah.
secretary.
all right. I like that, that's fine. So I'm deleting those right now. Okay, so all the members of the committee are listed, and then we have the next paragraph.
You wouldn't have to put member, you just put the following people were appointed
That's
to
fine.
the committee, yeah.
Yeah.
Without member next to it, and
I think
then
that's-
that next little
Oh,
paragraph.
I see what you mean, yep.
Who were
Yep.
elected co-chairs and
We'll take all
secretary, and
that out.
then that Jordan was appointed later, because that, although, yeah. I
Okay.
don't, is that really necessary, or can't Jordan just be listed as a member of the committee?
Well,
We would have to change the moderator because, or,
yeah,
I don't know, I just wonder if that needs to
I
be
think
called out.
Could be a
just,
footnote.
it's,
You can make it a footnote.
we could just do it as a footnote.
Make-
You could
Okay.
make it a footnote just next to Jordan's name. You could just say Jordan, you could just put that sentence. And I would prefer if it said to replace one originally appointed member who did not participate in any meetings in 2021. Just to be ultra clear. But you could make that whole sentence just a footnote next to Jordan's
You
name.
list him up at the top with the members.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the
that's what I
footnote
would do,
says
yeah.
that he was appointed to replace a member
Yeah,
that did not
he is
participate.
listed there, listed
Yeah.
on the second line. And then I would just make that town moderator statement be a footnote.
Okay,
Because the full records of appointments and swearing in are all at the town clerk's office. If anybody really gets interested, they can figure it out.
I don't think there is gonna be anybody interested. Uh, All right, so I'll add that as a footnote. Later on in this document, Ian has the listed as footnotes. Okay. I don't know how to format that.
You just make a note of it. I'm sure we can figure it out.
Yep, okay. You know, I'm gonna put it in as an asterisk for now, just so we know what it is. Okay. Because I'm hesitant to go in, I'm hesitant to fool with the formatting here. I'm just afraid it's gonna, I'm afraid I'm gonna do it incorrectly. So it now reads, the town moderator appointed, as a footnote, town moderator appointed Jordan Hyde to the committee in January 2022 to replace one originally appointed member who did not participate in any meetings in 2021. Okay, everybody's good about that?
That's-
All right, let's move on. Okay, the process, part 3. Anything in there?
Is 15 accurate? Is that concluding today? This is the second paragraph. Committee met 15 times.
Should be 16 now.
And then July.
well, we would have to change
Well, you'd have
to
to
July.
change to July 2022.
16 times to July.
Where are you, Dan?
Yeah, update it to 16 times and put
Bottom.
July 2022. Bottom paragraph on the first page, first line.
All right, so now it says July 16, it meant 16 times from August 2021 to July 2022, including 3 information gathering sessions. Okay. So we're in still in part 3. Anything else in part 3? Hearing none, we're going to move on to part 4. Again, if all of a sudden you come upon something, just interrupt me. Part 4, analysis of information. Now, when we met last, I remember going through this and we smoothed out the responses. We made it consistent. Anything in there?
I just said one thing that I kind of brought this up last time, but then I didn't really offer anything to fix it in the time in between, so apologies. But it still feels to me kind of abrupt when the 1913 seal shows up after this section without like analysis about how the 1913 seal came up in the responses.
So what would you like to include? Or would you like to add something?
Yes, but I feel like I need to just go back to
Yeah.
the
Would you like us to do this, Dan? Would you like us to discuss the cost, part 5, while you think about what you wanted to add? How would that be?
That sounds perfect.
Is that,
Thank you.
I'm not trying to eliminate you from the discussion about the cost, that part, but I'm just thinking for the sake of efficiency.
That makes
Is that
sense.
okay? Is that all right with everybody? We'll do it that way?
Yeah.
All right. So let me pause for a minute. In section 4, with the rest of the data that Ian had compiled, is there anything in there beyond what Dan has brought up? Is there anything else that you'd like to add in? Add in, delete?
Well, I thought about I'm not trying to diminish the number of people that responded, but based on the number of people that live in the town, when you look at 413 residents still shared video, there's 13,000 voters and 22,000 residents. So that's like 2 or 3% of the community had an opinion about it. And not that I want to get into that, but I just feel like it was kind of a small percentage of people that cared. And so we're making this change that's based on just that small percentage. It wasn't like we did a mass mailing to every house and said, please return this, or I don't even know if we should have or could have, but I just, I like how it worked out and played out, so I'm not trying to make waves. I just think it's when you really think about it, how many people responded, it's a very small percentage. 95% of people could care less what we do with the seal. That's what I'm getting out of it. But I appreciate people that do care and took the time, and I care, but I also know there's so many people that just don't and didn't connect to it. So.
Yeah, I think, I remember having a discussion about whether we should do a mailing and the cost to do that. I remember we weighed out that versus doing an electronic method. And that, if you remember when we had I remember having the discussion about the decision to have the public hearings.
Yeah.
And also, if you remember, we went through the public hearings, and then what time, remember we had extensive discussion about the timing of the public hearings. We tried to do one on Zoom, where, if you remember, yes, it was before Christmas, but before the Christmas holidays, but also we didn't have a robust response from people to do that. And we also we had an extensive outreach. That's one thing that occurred to me with this is, we did. Is it necessary to put the quantity and the method of the outreach do we need a paragraph in this section explaining that?
Maybe, I don't know that it's gonna change anything, or it's not going to really matter, but just to give it some,
I thought that we actually discussed this very issue last time. And somebody, I remember, sort of laughingly pointed out, yeah, and the whole thing's going to be decided at town meeting, where even a fewer numbers of
Yeah.
people are going to make the decision.
Yeah, no,
And
that's true.
so we actually probably have more people participating in this than will be at town meeting who will be voting on it. And I mean, if you think back to the last meeting, we did talk about that. And yeah, it's a small number, but people had more than ample opportunities, and we were out there for months asking people to participate.
right.
And I don't think that we should shy away from the fact that 3% of the population responded.
And I'm not trying to diminish who did respond.
No, and those.
But I feel like,
I hate to say this, particularly since we're being recorded, but I doubt that a lot of people really care.
right,
And the people that did care made a point to be there.
right. So,
Yeah, I'll let you guys wordsmith it, but I mean, you could just add a sentence right around with a 413 that essentially says that the committee acknowledges that this was not a scientific, that it was essentially a self-selected, non-scientific qualitative sampling, but that the committee appreciated the depth and breadth of the discussion, or of the deliberation. Because I think Ala mentioned it last time, she acknowledged it. I mean, everybody knows this wasn't a random sampling, and it was a qualitative, sort of self-selected thing. But as Phyllis just said, to have the committee acknowledge that, but to say that they still felt that there was a good breadth to the discussion and the deliberation sort of makes that point without belaboring it.
yeah.
And I'll let the social scientists like Ian and Ala figure out how to phrase that. But I think that would get the idea across that the committee knows this wasn't a random sampling where statistically we know we hit everybody.
So the committee, I'm putting a sentence in right now, John. So the committee acknowledges that this is not a scientific qualitative sample.
No, it is qualitative. It's a
Quantitative.
non-scientific.
Sorry, it's not a scientific quantitative sample, my bad.
I mean, I would let Ala and Ian make sure we get the words right.
It is qualitative.
Yeah.
Well, it's relatively quantitative.
Yeah, I mean, I would get the terminology from Ian and Ala, but
Yeah,
just say, it's not a statistic random sampling.
Just so someone.
Yeah, just so somebody knows that everybody, that we're aware, that you guys are aware of that.
Right, that if we didn't have 20,000.
Yeah, nobody's claiming this is a scientific, sampling of the population.
What if we said something to the effect, however, the committee extended its outreach?
Well, I think we've certainly made it clear that we did a lot of outreach. I think just a simple sentence that we acknowledge it's not a scientific sampling, but these are the results of significant outreach.
We talked a lot about that too, making sure that we really did go
Yeah,
above and beyond, like, to reach out to as many people as we could.
In many groups.
yeah, I mean, so,
So the committee acknowledges that this is not a scientific quantitative sample. However, the committee extended its outreach to many parts of the community, and these are the results of that effort.
yeah,
How about that?
that's good. That's good.
Okay. Do we want to put in that we considered direct
No.
mail or anything? Because I don't think we need to get into
Yeah,
that.
That simple sentence is
Yeah,
enough. You don't
I
have to
think
go
that's,
through it.
I think that's a question, if someone brings it up at town meeting, then I think we answer it.
Yeah.
But I don't think we need to do that.
No,
No.
then they ask you, and then you say, well, look, we did all of these things, we reached
Right.
out to these groups,
Right.
different people, we had all of these, At that point, you can respond to somebody that asks the question, but I think just that simple sentence, it acknowledges we know that this is not, a scientific sampling, but that this is after the results of our outreach, this is what we got.
Okay.
I mean, we could go on for 10 years waiting for
Yeah.
20,000 people to
Right.
Okay.
respond, it's not gonna happen.
Or even you know, just the voters that.
13,000 people, no.
And
It's not
they're
gonna
not
happen.
going to, they're not going to, so, and just so they know that we know that, yes, we're aware that not everybody, a small percentage
Anything else in part 4?
put it out.
And we're still in the parking lot, we have, not literally, actually in the parking lot, but here, Dan is working on this one. Okay, so we will come back to that for now. How about we move on to part 5, the cost? All right, so this part, the committee discussed 4 separate times how much a town seal change would cost the town. We concluded the following. Number 1, the Westborough Town Clerk's office is in possession of the fully functioning 1913 town seal embosser. Upon a vote to approve by the Westborough Town Meeting, the 1913 town seal will be used by, it should be town seal embosser, will be used by the town clerk's office. Now, I just put in 30 days after passage. I'm not sure if that's standard practice, not standard practice. I looked at the Mass General law on this, and it says that we just have to have a town seal. It doesn't, so that's why I added the in accordance with Mass General law, Chapter 40, Section 47. It just says we have to have a town seal.
And I believe we have to let the Secretary of State's office know that we've changed it, but other than that,
Well, that would give you the 30 days.
yeah. And I don't know if it's 30, I can find that.
Oh.
I don't know
Yeah,
exactly.
that would be the only thing, is whether it's 30, is it 60, is it 90, I'm not sure. And I just I put it in there mainly as a placeholder. And then part 2, upon a vote to approve by the Westborough Town Meeting, any current use of the 1977 town seal will be replaced by the 1913 town seal when a vehicle, uniform, stationery, etc. is no longer in use. This change applies to all places in the town where the 1977 town seal is used. The committee acknowledges this process, that this process will be slow, but is the least costly way to replace the 1977 town seal. Anything?
Did you want to state that that it's not a requirement that the town seal appear on vehicles, uniforms, etc.?
I think he says it says just where it's used.
Yeah, it isn't a requirement, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't know if you wanted to make it clear that it's not like, I'm just saying, if someone comes into this thinking like, now are all the DPW trucks gonna have this very plain circle on it? I didn't know if the committee wanted to say that there's no requirement that the town seal be used, just like the select board approved the sleigh that's on the street signs.
Right.
It's not like that seal has to be replaced on vehicles or uniforms. A different design can be used because it doesn't have to be the town seal. I just didn't know if the committee wanted to make that clear.
Well, actually, we probably should.
We can change it to just say, any current
Could be,
use of
say
the
could be replaced instead of will be.
1977 town seal, instead of saying will be replaced, we could say, although not mandatory, could be replaced.
Yeah.
Or we could say it may be replaced, or we could just say it may be replaced, and not even necessarily indicate that it may be replaced by the new town seal, or by the 1913 town seal.
So you want to change that word will to may?
Yeah, because I think we could put logos or whatever they wanted to have, they were talking about a logo.
Yes, the only mandatory use of the seal is for you at the town clerk's office to certify.
And letterhead,
Stamp-
I think letterhead probably.
Well, the letterhead.
And other than that,
Everything else is discretionary.
Right, okay, so
This is-
maybe, okay, so let's see. Any current use of the 1970 may be replaced by the 1913 seal is no longer in use.
But Jordan's point, it doesn't have to say may be replaced by, it could just say may be replaced, and you could actually strike the by the 1913 town seal.
Yeah, because
Because they could be replaced really with anything.
They could develop their own logo.
Yeah.
we
Okay,
could say, or alternative design.
is that going to cause,
Oh, yeah, that could really get,
I think we should leave this.
don't throw in alternative design,
Same
because
here.
then we're gonna end up in,
Yeah.
got down a rabbit hole that we don't wanna go down, my
Yeah.
God.
like
I mean, it's actually true, and that's fine, but that would be a discussion that would take 3 hours right there.
Yeah.
Yes, it would.
We don't want to do that.
Yes, it would.
I mean,
Dan?
I like just the wording saying that it may be replaced, like, that is not forceful, saying
Yeah.
it has to be, but it also doesn't get into the whole,
That's
like,
right.
question of.
just,
making up
and just
their
stop
own
it right there,
references.
may be replaced.
Yeah.
The only thing is, if we do say that, what if you have a department that doesn't want to replace it?
Then they use the old one.
Hmm?
Isn't that their choice?
Yeah,
So
That's the whole
it
point,
makes
it's their
choice
choice.
then. It's not mandatory.
yeah. It's not the town seal, so they can do whatever they want. I mean,
Right.
it would likely be up to the select board for almost everybody,
Right.
because it would be their procurement of
Okay.
stuff. I
Um,
mean, none of this is saying that people can't still use the old seal, it just isn't the official town seal, is my interpretation of all the discussions
Yeah.
this committee is having.
No, that's.
It's a piece of artwork that's out there, but it would not be the official town seal.
Once it's no longer the town seal, then for all the town care, people can do whatever they want with it.
All right, so, okay, so I have it, the way it reads, upon vote town meeting, any current use of the 1977 town seal may be replaced by the 1913 town seal when a vehicle, uniform, stationery, etc. is no longer in use. Do we need the next sentence then? This change applies to all places in the town where the 1977,
No,
No.
we don't,
we
take
don't
it out.
need that.
And I thought the consensus I heard was to strike the by the 1913 town seal and just say may be replaced when a vehicle. And
So
to leave it moot and what it would be replaced with. That's what I thought,
Yeah,
that's what I thought I heard
that.
a majority of you say.
May be replaced when a vehicle.
So I had found this little thing about town seals in Massachusetts, and it says most of the 351 cities and towns in our Commonwealth adopted official seals early in their existence. Since not all had done so, an act was passed by the state legislature and signed by Governor Walcott on April 10, 1899, requiring all towns to establish a seal of the town, which seal shall be in the custody of the town clerk. And with that, I just, I could go on, but it doesn't really, I think whatever a town chooses to do, they have to have one,
Yeah,
but
right.
whatever they choose to do with that seal.
Yeah, it doesn't, its use doesn't have to be pervasive, it can be, but it doesn't have to be.
Right.
Should we also change from will in the last sentence to may?
Or would.
Or, yeah, the committee acknowledges that this process.
Maybe
Maybe
so,
slow.
yeah.
I'd say it would be slow.
I like the soft mays.
I think, I actually like the word may there better.
It's just, I mean, it would be consistent to have may be
Yeah.
replaced, may be.
I like that.
One thing I wanted to bring up about the cost section, and I don't know if we want to get into this or not, but when you kind of establish a new logo or even go back to an existing image, there's a process of like compiling a set of files that work for each application. Like you need something specific for embroidery. You can't just use like an image, right? It has to be like a vector-based. So the rollout of the return would need some work done. It would be a small amount of work, not the extent of like, a design, whole new design, but there is some cost involved that we're kind of skipping over here.
Can we rely on the IT department here for that?
I don't
We do
know.
have an IT department in town who can convert the images. If we start with one image, they can then convert them into the other formats.
I don't know anything about our IT department, so if that might solve it.
Well, there is an IT department, and I know what you're talking about because I've had to go through that process sometimes. And the conversion, any IT guy who knows what he's doing probably should be able to accomplish that. So I don't know that there would be a cost involved with that because there is an IT department in town hall.
I can check that tomorrow.
Yeah, and see.
Oh, that's okay. I'm sure they'll just go that's okay.
All right, anything else on part 5? Shall we go to recommendations?
Oh, you're moving fast.
We are, well, we'll probably have to go back to part 4 for a moment. Dan is working on something, on a piece for us. Okay,
I'm sorry to hijack this, but who's taking minutes?
Eric.
Are you cool to continue, or do you want me to?
No, yeah, I'll keep going, thanks.
Okay, in response to the 4 charges, so part 6, number 1, a summary of our committee's findings with the conclusion that the committee, referring to a majority of the comments received, proposes that the official seal of the town of Westborough be changed from its current format. That language is identical to what we agreed to last time. Number 2, the committee recommends that the town meeting vote to replace the current 1977 seal with the original town seal approved by the town in 1913. The 1913 town seal will be used by the town clerk's office, again, beginning 30 days. I know it's repetitive, but it's because it's a recommendation. After passage, whether we can change that if it's 60 or whatever. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 47. Any current use of the 1977 town seal may be replaced when a vehicle, uniform, etc. is no longer in use. Everybody good? Questions? Comments? If number
We'll get
1...
into it when you talk to me, but I don't think you have to say proposes the following articles. What I would suggest you do is to highlight what the top recommendations are and then talk about what the articles are, because these recommendations are going to drive the creation of articles.
Okay.
Articles are written essentially such that it's a request for the town to take action, and they're not necessarily specific to the recommendations. So I would say, just to make it ultra clear, that you start out by saying these are the recommendations of the committee, and then we can talk about this, essentially that the committee will recommend that the town act on these recommendations through town meeting articles, and then I'll help you craft them. And we'll talk
Okay,
about
so should we put a statement in, for example, after number 3, that something to the effect that these will become town articles, or actually, and I added a number 4 here, which we haven't
Yeah, I think you
discussed.
should just try to clearly state the recommendations, just as recommendations, and not worry about how they get turned into town meeting articles, because we can talk about this after you talk about that or whenever.
Okay.
But I think that the articles are essentially going to codify the committee reporting it out. It's essentially going to be the town hearing the report. Then part of that report is going to be to recommend a process, and then the articles are going to be essentially the embodiment of that process. And I can help work on that.
So the next statement that's in italics, if this fails, then the next 2, I change it to the next 2 recommendations become moot, no further action would transpire.
I mean, it may make sense. Again, I'm reading into because I've been to all these meetings except last one, and I watched all of the last one. My understanding is that the committee wants to make a report that says that the committee is recommending that the current town seal be changed. And then the other part of the charge to the committee was to bring forth a process, essentially to recommend a process for creating a new town seal. And I think it could be as simple as saying that something along the lines of the committee recommends that the following process be taken for the town to adopt a new town seal, and then say step 1, the committee suggests reverting to the 1913 town seal, and then 2, if the town does not want to do that, then the committee recommends the creation. Again, this is what's written here. If it's not what you want to do, that's fine. Would recommend the formation of a town seal design committee, and then you'd have to go into the details of who appoints it, who's on it, and what's their charge. And then from there, it will be easy for me to help craft the articles to do that.
Right. So under recommendations, in response to the 4 charges created by the May 2021 Westborough Town Meeting, the Town Seal Review Committee proposes the following process.
It just makes
The following recommendations, and then
Okay.
and then 1 would be answering the question about whether the seal should be changed, and then 2 would be the process, and then 2 I think sounds like it has a sub A and sub B. which would be, 2 would be the process.
In number 1, should we say recommends that the official seal of the town of Westborough be changed?
Yeah, I think that makes it ultra clear.
Okay, so,
Or revert back. I like
To, you know, or,
Revert.
yeah,
Revert back to the original.
so that all of this here,
Mhm. Recommend that the official seal,
okay, so I'll take this out.
yep.
Okay, recommend that the official, so number 1, so under part 6, where it says the following recommendation to the Westborough Town Meeting. Number 1, recommends that the official town seal of the town of Westborough be changed from its current format.
Mhm.
2, we should just use the word recommends again, right?
Mhm. Right.
Recommends that the town meeting vote to replace the current 1977 seal with the original town seal approved by the town in 1913.
Yeah, I would actually, just to make it absolutely crystal clear that you're recommending a process, I would say 2 could say something like the committee recommends that the town meeting, that essentially recommends the following process to replace the current 1977 town seal. And then A, the town meeting vote, then say that the committee recommends the town meeting vote to revert to the use of the 1913 seal. And then B would be, if the town chooses not to revert to that seal, the committee recommends the creation of a town seal design committee. And then go to that.
Okay. So I'm just looking at the syntax.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I don't think we need to say that the town meeting vote to replace, we should just recommend that they replace, right, with the original town seal from 1913. So A would be something like, the committee recommends to replace the current 1977 town seal with the original town seal.
Put in the phrase, the following process. The committee recommends the
Yes,
following
in-
process to
exactly.
replace the town.
Yeah, 2 and then 2A and 2B, I think is what I've heard in terms of how you want it.
Right, what I'm talking about, Phyllis, is A, what goes into A. In other words, cut out that vote language.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't worry about saying that the town votes, just think of it just as a pure process. Think of
Right.
it as, you want to, the way I view this is that the committee's been asked to report out its recommendation, and there's 2 pieces of the recommendation. There's a change or no change, and then the charge was if there is a change, there's a process. So 1 is that the committee is recommending to change the town seal, and then the process is essentially recommending a process that the town consider reverting to the 1913 town seal. And if the town doesn't want to do that, it recommends the creation of a town seal design committee.
Do we say consider, that the town consider, or do we say that we recommend the replacement?
Yes, you can do that, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think just having it as I wouldn't want the committee to get criticized saying that's not a process. Your process is, my read of this is that the committee's trying to recommend a process where there's a very simple, straightforward action they can
Right.
take. But the committee also feels that if the town doesn't want to do that, then the next normal step would be to create a town seal design committee
Okay.
that would do all the other things
Yep.
that were talked about like a few meetings ago.
Do we need to say what the town seal would be used on, or is that sort of?
No.
That's, right?
I really
Because-
think that one of the articles is as simple as that,
Yeah.
essentially something along the lines of to see if the town will adopt the 1913 town seal as
Yeah,
its,
I think
as its
that's
town
it.
seal.
Okay.
So in A, remove everything that says sentence 2 and thereafter. The 1913, right, so that and the next sentence.
Okay.
Does there need to be anything about,
And then what's the next one?
If this is not approved, the town meeting
currently being
authorizes the
used,
formation of a town seal
until
design committee for the
the
purpose of
time
redesigning
it's
the
replaced with
1977
time.
town seal.
That's part B.
That's part B,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so we're good.
I'll go back, I'll probably,
We
I'll go back to see
could,
the 1977 article.
Could we
I
just,
didn't have
yeah,
time to do that, but I mean, it
that
really
could
would
delete it.
be
Could we just
that the
put
town,
the syntax here?
the town adopted, and then it's
In
adopted
one, you
whenever
have
that,
recommend that,
whenever you
in two,
and
you
the
have
attorney
committee
general
recommends.
approve
Can we
the
standardize
results of the
it
town
and make
meeting.
the same across
You know,
both?
and, and then it just
And then,
happens organically, like whenever you
I
want to
would,
start using.
I would
Right.
replace the period after 1913 with a semicolon, and then make if, or unless you're gonna do, well, just because the A begins with a lowercase letter and then B
Yeah.
begins with a capital, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
So,
just kind of seems like way.
just start that one.
Yeah, or sure, that's fine, that
Alright.
works, and then, yeah, and then a period would work at the end.
Okay, and a period there, oops, period here.
So should we say in one, instead of recommend that, should we say committee recommends also, just for uniformity?
Yeah.
Committee recommends that the official seal of the town of Westborough be changed from its current format.
Yeah, it's just, I was trying to use the word process because that was,
Right. No, but I guess what I'm saying is in one, we have recommend that the official seal be changed, and in two, we have committee recommends. So just, we can standardize that language and say committee recommends in number one, that the official seal.
oh, I misunderstood you, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Exactly. Perfect.
Okay, so now it reads, the committee recommends that the official seal of the town of Westborough be changed from its current format. 2, the committee recommends the following process. A, to replace the current town seal.
Oh, here we go,
Yeah.
yeah.
The current 1977 town seal with the original town seal approved by the town in 1913. B, if this is not approved, the town meeting authorizes the formation of a town seal design committee for the purpose of redesigning the 1977 town seal.
I would probably rephrase that to say for the purpose of designing a new town seal, so people don't think that they, I mean, there's more details you'll have to discuss, but somebody might interpret redesigning the 1977 town seal,
Okay.
meaning they're starting with that artwork and going
Oh,
to
right.
start from
Oh,
there.
So,
Yeah.
for the purpose of
Well, that's right.
designing
Yeah.
a new,
Designing it, not redesigning, but designing a new
Designing a
town.
new town seal,
all
yeah.
right,
For the purpose of designing a new town seal.
And then,
all right,
Or actually, to establish a new town seal design.
all right. All right, we're good so far?
We're good so far. You have
All right.
two periods there at the end of the sentence.
Okay, now, number 3, we didn't discuss this, I put this in this morning, thinking about this a bit, and I don't know what you think about it, we can delete it, but I would just.
You mean number 4?
It's, on your sheet, it's number 4,
Okay.
yes, okay? Here it's number.
Yeah.
Oh, you just
Okay.
changed the number.
We recommend, so it should be the committee. And
I
again-
like what you're saying, but it's not our charge though, is it?
I was going to say, I
Well,
don't think it should be there.
you don't
It's
think
not
so?
something that we were,
It's not our task.
It
You
was
don't think it's
not-
a process?
it
It's
was
part of
not
a
part of our
process?
process, it's not something we were tasked with doing. It might be something that a design committee may say, let's, remember the old town seals and put this, but that would be for a new design committee to do. But I don't think it's proper, I don't like it, I guess, is the bottom line.
My thinking was that instead of just, instead of just saying that that the 1977 seal now just disappears, that it would be a way for us to provide context relative to the history of the community. But, I don't know, it was just one of these things that occurred to me. If the rest of you don't like it, it's fine.
Does something like this even have to be voted by the town, or can
No.
it just be like,
A librarian
Yeah.
places it on the website, right? Or
You can just
exactly.
talk to the librarian or something.
Okay.
The thing is that 1977 seal is going to be, quote, part of the history because it's on the brochures from that 250, I think it was the 250th.
Yeah.
So it's by
Yeah, I forgot about
virtue of
that.
how it was used.
Okay.
It's going to be there. It's not going to just disappear.
Right.
It's going to be part of the history of, when we had the 250th celebration, here was a seal that was
Right.
created for that celebration, and it's always going to be there. That's not going to go away. So we're not dispensing with something that didn't have its own little history, which will stay as part of the town history.
Fine with me. I put it in because I thought, let me at least bring it up, see what we want, what we wanted to do. And you want to get rid of it, that's fine. I have no issue with it.
I
so.
do think though that we should add a little more to the process in B, some detail on like the moderator.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there really has to be more detail, and I know that you're trying to finish up these meetings, but the committee should discuss if there's gonna be if the town takes you up on the offer of there being a town seal design committee, you should specify who appoints them,
Right.
how many members, is there any sort of guidance about who the members should be, and it should have a charge of and just like this committee was charged, the charge of that committee would be to come back with a specific design or something like that.
So wouldn't we use pretty much,
I was gonna.
Yeah, it would be
Yeah.
very similar, except this time it would be focused on what it looks like, not should it change. I mean,
Right.
that was the whole,
Right.
that's the whole history of how this committee came apart, is that the select board arrived, my interpretation of the events, where the select board decided it was too much to ask a single committee to decide yes or no to replace it, and to make it go down the path of designing a new one. And so it left that process question to this one.
Why don't we add these details and take this committee as the template and say exactly in this point under B,
Yeah.
to say this committee would be appointed by the town moderator and consist of 9 members.
Well, it's fantastic. I mean, I think you should have a discussion about how, here's what I've thought when I watched the last one. You should think about how many, and I will defer a little bit to Dan and Jordan and people who've done this. Think about good representation, but how many, is there too many cooks spoil the broth? Because there was also discussion at committee meetings about this committee shouldn't necessarily design it, but should come up with either an RFP or a process to get it designed. So it's not, because where everybody knows the jokes about design by committee. And so you can think about, should it be, I always prefer an odd number, should it be 3, should it be 5? Should there be some carryover from this committee and other new people? Should it all be people who are versed in either the history or design, industries, and things like that. So it's very much cookie cutter from this one, but it is a little different, because this one would be focused on getting people who could arrive at either developing an RFP or choosing from a competition or choosing potentially what should come before town meeting.
Okay, so,
That's a little trickier. I know that's more than you want to do, but I mean, to have a committee with the charges to come back with a new town seal, there should be enough structure that the people on the committee have guidance of what they're supposed to do, just like you folks were given guidance.
With this, I felt through this whole process kind of handcuffed by that guidance.
Mhm.
I think 9 is too big.
Mhm.
I mean, how many people applied to be on this committee?
16.
So, and this has been a really laborious process. I mean, we probably are looking at maybe some more meetings beyond this. So I would be in favor of writing it where, I don't know, just to expedite it. I mean, this is going on for years and years now, and we're looking at more years than this. I don't know, maybe I'm too grumpy to be helpful, so I'll just keep taking notes. But I, for one, won't be involved in any further committee work on this. I've done, this is my part. So whatever suggestions that you could offer, John, to like get from, I mean, we're talking, what, 2024, 2025?
I mean, you did it in a year. So, I mean, I think there was discussion about whether it should be a committee that would either shepherd an RFP and or a competition or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
What does RFP stand for?
request for proposals. So it would essentially be, and should there be a budget, things like that. So,
It just seems like it should be, have 2 designers, like maybe 5 people, I don't know.
I think 3 to 5 people for a design committee would be good, and if it's people who have some way, have some knowledge of how this works in the
Yeah,
industry,
actual design.
let them figure it out, and, and they can have their own
Yep.
competition, and then they can choose to, which one to bring forward, or they could do what you're doing, and they could say, here's our top choice, here's our second choice, here's our third choice. So, again, you don't have to be too laborious. The town meeting has to pick.
yeah, I just worry about being too prescriptive.
Okay.
Because I agree with Eric, I think this committee has been very faithful about sticking to its charge. And I know I've made proposals where, and others have said, hey, that's not our charge, and just kind of kept it, in other words, we need to stay in our lane relative to the charge. So I guess the question I have is it better the better to
I know
give.
Dan's writing his thing, I'd be curious to know what Dan thinks, because I think he was the one who talked about RFPs.
Mhm.
If you were gonna have a design committee, how many people and how broad, or how would you want the charge to be written? Would it just be to come back with a proposed design? I think you were the one who talked about maybe doing an RFP rather than having a competition or deciding whether to do that or what have you.
Yeah, I definitely think that would be better. I would definitely be in favor of an RFP over, any other option, if we were gonna start from scratch. In terms of how many people, I think that's really hard. I do agree with like the too many cooks in the kitchen kind of idea, but if it gets too small, I would worry, about like single voices taking over or that kind of thing. I think it so depends on who's involved.
Maybe you think like 5 would be? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm thinking 5, because I've been involved in some stuff like that and design work, and 5 people would be.
would provide a balance that
The
one
ma-
person
it
didn't
kind of
dominate.
lets-
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah, because
can.
you don't want one person to dominate, the other people feel that they don't even
Yeah.
get a chance to.
For this committee, was there a range of members given?
7 to 9.
So should we say 3 to 5, or should we say 5 to 7?
No, not 7.
So
I think
7's too
5 should be your
many.
max.
So should we say 4 to 5?
No more than
Three to
5.
five.
Yeah,
3 to
you have
5.
to keep it as a.
Yeah, odd, right, because, yeah, so let's say 3 to 5 then. This committee shall consist of 3 to 5 residents. Oh, I see what you're saying here. The committee of 3 to 5 residents would be appointed by the town moderator. Okay,
Is that all right?
yeah, there's extra spaces there.
Is this where we would come up with a budget for this committee?
If you think it needs one.
I mean, we would just be picking a number, wouldn't we?
I guess unless Dan has, I guess, Dan, do you know, would there be agencies that would be willing to do this work not knowing, on pro bono, or would they expect to get paid? Do you have any sense of what, like a logo design or whatever it is?
If they had like a tie to the community, that's the only way. But the other thing too is like, I've heard about designers kind of becoming aware of how frequent this kind of work is going to be as other entities like reevaluate their seals.
Mm-hmm.
And there may be interest in kind of
Having one out there
experience.
just to.
Yeah, but I don't know if that. I think it would be much safer to expect to pay for it.
Yeah, any idea of a ballpark? Would it be like, no,
Not really.
Okay.
It just totally depends like how bad they want the work.
Yeah.
And if the whole team involved, if it's just one designer, and then exactly like what the scope would be. If they're doing like research among the community, or if they're basing their work off of research that's already been done. There are a lot of
I think
questions.
it's likely that there wouldn't necessarily need to be a lot of new research because of,
Yeah.
if we can provide the survey responses that we all receive, and we could provide that to the design committee and have them, for instance, summarize that and provide that as guidance to whomever does create the design.
I know in my experience, which may be not quite so current, I do think that to get a profession, if you're going out with an RFP to get a professional, input from either an agency or a designer, you probably have to assume $3,000 to $5,000. I think would be a reasonable assumption. I mean, now, as Dan said, if somebody's hungry, they might do it for $500, but you're gonna get a $500 seal. So, because you're gonna get something he can do, after dinner one night while he's watching the Red Sox. So, I mean, if you want something done pretty professionally, I think you have to assume $3,000 to $5,000.
I honestly don't think we should be setting a budget for this. We're out of our depth, we're guessing.
No, I'm not saying we should, but I'm just saying that at a minimum, that's the kind of money you're gonna be thinking about. And if we were going to set a budget, we would need to now go out and do more research and find out exactly what somebody might charge us for that.
What if, I feel like we're getting way in the weeds here. What if we just left it that this town seal design committee would solicit the town meeting for a budget. They would have to
Well,
determine.
really, it's their,
It's their
I
job.
see it as
Right.
their
That's what I
responsibility.
mean, so
That they would develop an RFP, and as part of that RFP, they would come up with a budget.
So I guess the question here is, do we want to saddle probably the right word, saddle this committee with the requirement of getting an RFP, or do we leave it open so that that committee can decide how they're going to
Well, if you're asking from a personal standpoint, competition scares the heck out of me,
I
because that
agree.
1977 was a competition.
That's
I
how
would write, I would like to
That's why
tie.
we're here tonight, right?
That, I would like to tie them up to an RFP meeting. They're gonna go out to a professional company that's gonna develop a professional-looking seal. At the beginning of the meeting, you ask why people, if they wanted to say why they were on the committee. I'm sitting here because if we're gonna get a new seal, and we're not going back to 1913, I wanna see something that looks kind of slick and professional. I don't want some competition where high school kids are gonna be in it again, and we're gonna end up with something that's no better than what we had. So I would personally want to see them saddled with an RFP, which means that we'll end up with a seal that will look like a 21st century seal for a 21st century town.
Part of what we need to include here is a charge for this committee, but without having a better sense of what the work will entail, or having done the research for this, maybe we could include some language like, this committee will be charged with, and then we can say, you know, soliciting an RFP, developing a budget, and then include some wording like, among other things. That would give that committee some wiggle room in terms of setting their own tasks based on what they begin doing, and sort of learn by doing what they need to do, while at the same time we are giving some guidance on what they're tasked with.
All right, so I put in, using what, in that spirit, what you just said, this committee of 3 to 5 residents would be appointed by the town moderator. This committee will be charged with, number 1, seeking a professional request for proposal to create a design.
To developing a budget.
I'd say determine funding source.
Well,
It's
she
a
just
little
said,
less scary than budget,
Oh,
because
okay.
they could go to
Oh, yeah, that's true.
nonprofits and say, hey, would any of the nonprofit groups or would some organization like to raise money to do
Okay.
this?
that's.
So I think I think essentially finding a funding source
Okay.
doesn't make it sound like it's necessarily
Yeah, that's
taxpayer
true.
money, and it
Yes.
broadens
That's
the
true.
approach they can take.
All right, so number 2, developing a funding source.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Or
3 others.
I think finding a funding source rather than
or,
Go ahead,
or
Jordan.
determining rather than just developing the funding source. Like,
Okay,
Yeah, determining is good.
determining a funding source. What was the third thing?
Other duties
I'd
is,
say. Yeah, I'd say just say and other duties associated with bringing a new, proposed new town seal before town meeting. Just, again, I'll say,
No.
just give them the wiggle room.
Yep.
Just say, do what you need to do, but these
Yeah.
are the,
That lets them kind of set their own
Mhm.
direction. The only thing they've really been saddled with is they have to do an RFP.
Yep.
And that's the only thing that
All
we've
right.
saddled them with. Or, we haven't tied their hands, we've just made it very clear that that's how we want them to do it.
All right, so this committee of 3 to 5 residents would be appointed by the town moderator. This committee will be charged with seeking a professional request for proposal to create a design.
wait, would they be seeking a request for proposal or?
Issuing,
soliciting, right? Yeah.
soliciting,
Soliciting,
that's right,
sorry,
soliciting.
Yep. Soliciting a professional request for proposal to create a,
for a proposal.
New town seal.
To create a design for a new town seal.
So if request for proposal is the thing that they're getting, would they be like soliciting it or providing the request for proposal or what?
Oh, yeah.
I used to, when I did it, I used to issue
Issue,
a
yeah.
request for proposals.
Yes, yeah, that's good.
And then companies would come back to me with their proposals.
Mhm.
So you issue a
Yeah,
request
that's-
for a
Yes,
proposal.
Right, yeah.
So it's issuing
You issue a request for
a
proposal.
request.
Yeah, because
issuing
you
a
request the
professional-
proposals to come into
Issuing a
you.
professional request for a proposal,
Well, it would be request for proposal, is that the wording?
Yes.
yes,
So to note a, note
yeah,
in there.
to create a design for a new town seal. That's wording. Right, determining a funding source. Other duties required to bring a new town seal to the town meeting for approval.
John had mentioned, we've talked about who's going to appoint it, the number of members and the charge of the committee. John mentioned the fourth thing, which would be the qualifications for the people on that committee. And I think we should kind of think about that. Again, you don't want to tie John's hands or be too specific, but on the other hand, you don't want just any Joe Schmo sitting on a committee like that, particularly if you're only going to have 4 or 5 people.
Well, can't that be part of the 4 or 5, the 3 or 5
Yeah,
people?
it's really just if you want to provide
Qualified.
any guidance, like this one listed, I think an interest in civic engagement, history, in design, I think were essentially just guidance points given to me.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, that sounds good for the
I mean, so
next
if you look at
thing.
the original wording of the.
That sounds good for the next one.
I know you guided yourself by diversity also when you were selecting
Yeah.
folks for this committee.
Yeah.
Was that something that was put into the
No,
wording?
that's just something that I try to do because I know it's
We can add that,
important.
yeah.
So,
I don't have the
members-
precise wording with me, but I can get you the wording of
Okay.
the article that created this committee.
Yeah, because we want to put that in there too.
We'll have okay, so this one went very quickly for me. Okay, potential committee members will have an interest.
Interest or background in history, design, and civic engagement. It was some words along those lines that were in this article that created this committee.
If you leave that sort of blank right now or highlighted, John
Yeah, I
can
can
add the
fill it
wording.
in, yeah.
Okay.
Just as long as we include also the
Right.
diversity component.
You could introduce it as this diverse group, or yeah, something.
Just remember, 5
something
people,
to
you can only get
introduce
so diverse. 'Cause
Yeah.
It's really hard to find diversity and people who have time to do on committees. So.
Right.
But
I always try to do it, but it is not easy.
So this diverse committee will have an interest in or background of, and then you'll have to get me the wording.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on this?
I like this. And what's happening here starting at page 5? What are these?
Well, we didn't get there.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, no, you're all good. So in the last, I think it's the last page,
Would the committee want to bring forward how many designs? Would that be up to them for people to choose?
Yeah, I think that's where you probably want to leave it to see how, I mean, just like this one, it could be that the committee's going to want to have their, they're going to have to go through they're going to get RFPs, hopefully more than one person responds. And then hopefully they would then triage them, and then they would probably decide, do they have a first, second, and third choice? If they wanted, they could have public input sessions to do like a ranked choice voting type thing to decide which one to do, where they could bring one and do a 3-part article that says our preference is 1, 2, and 3. I mean, I think you don't want to provide that much structure because I think it's all going to depend on how that committee, what responses they get and whether they have a strong preference and whatever.
This is way down the road, but it's not beyond the possible scenario where all this is done and it's brought before town meeting and town meeting votes down their proposed
Yep,
new seal.
that's always possible. That's why you don't want
So do
Isn't that depressing?
do we at this point plan for the eventuality that, I mean, that would really be a real frustrating 5-year experience at the end of this where it's just said, they're gonna say no and then that's that.
That's what it's always, unfortunately, that's what it comes down to.
Can part of this right here warrant say, if no is voted, then we go to the 1913?
oh, in other words, for
No,
part,
I mean-
for
No,
part
they would
B.
have to do that. The
Well,
next
what-
committee
but I-
would
I
have
see
to.
what you're saying.
I'm trying to prevent a situation. Well, first of all, the mood in the room is, if they say no to the 1913, what they're saying is yes to keep the actual seal. So that's my take on what's probably gonna be going on with the 115 people that are there. But hypothetically, they say no to yes to this change to the 77 seal, no to the 1913, let's go for a new one. But possibly could we have the verbiage here that if through this process, you don't like the new one, then we are gonna go to the 19th.
No,
Because are we not
a town
honoring-
meeting can't bind a future
Yeah,
town meeting.
because
given
the,
action.
You can't.
because the results of our research over this long process is the majority, by not 50.2%, want to no longer have the 1977 seal. What could we do so at the end of this, we don't end up still with the 1977 seal, dishonoring the majority of the people that said, we don't want that seal anymore? I don't know.
Hopefully that will be voted on.
I don't know the answer to that question, but it's possible that's where we end up. That we end up with a committee that goes through this process, that offers a seal, and it's voted down, and so we're right where we are now.
I don't think, I hope that's.
That's the nature of how our government works. We've had designs for buildings to be built, there are a lot of people who put an awful lot of time and money into that the town has said, no, we don't
Yeah.
want to build it, so. It's frustrating, but that's the way it is. This town meeting can't bind a future town meeting except by borrowing. It's about the only thing you can do to bind a future town meeting
Okay.
is to get a borrowing. There's no way to force this town meeting to say, if 2 or 3 years down the road, if this committee's thing is voted down, then it reverts to the 1913 seal. I think the way the process works is that you have to assume that if the majority of people want the 1913 seal, they will vote on that at this town meeting, and then this committee would move to pass over the creation of this design committee. It would be done unless and until a group brings it up. Now, there's nothing to be said that at a separate article, a citizen or a group could bring forward at any time after that design committee to say to revert to the 1913 or some other seal. I mean, open town meeting, town meeting process means that with a number of signatures, any citizen can bring any proposal. There's nothing that says the town seal couldn't change. We wouldn't want to do it, but there's nothing that says it couldn't change a year after we change it.
That's true.
You know,
I got you.
There's always a path to change it, so.
But I think if we're clear too, that we're recommending they go back to the original seal.
Right, I think that's why I wanted the process to be very clear, because I think in the report out, again, I'm not saying you should do this, I'm saying what I'm hearing is that the process is you want the town to vote on 1913.
Yes.
If they say yes, you're done, you move the pass over to the design committee. If they say no, you do the design committee. And if the feeling of town meeting is to keep the 1977 seal, they would say no to both. Now, I don't think many people would say kick it down the road and do that, but I mean, you don't know. But I assume that's the way that the committee expects it to play out.
I think, so the very last parts of that report, which has the 1913 town seal, those boxes that you see at the end, I think at this point, all that could be deleted.
Yep.
And then,
Well, I think just for the sense of the report, having an image of the 1977 and the 1913 seal provides context.
yes,
So it doesn't have to be in that box, but I would somewhere in the report
yeah,
show what the two look like.
Probably back where we did the,
It can be in the history.
maybe we did it at the beginning of in the
I
background.
mean, yeah, similar to those slides you put up at the
Yeah,
public forum.
Yep.
the background, maybe at the very.
So what I've done, what I just did was I took the 1913 seal and I put it at the end of where the statement reads, the committee elected Ala and me as chair, Ian as the secretary, before it moves on to the committee's mission statement. So just as a placeholder, I put the 1913 seal, I'll put the 1977 seal there also, okay? So at the end of all of this, so we have the list of the members. Dan added a syntax change while we were talking. And Dan, I don't remember what that's.
Oh, it was just,
To do away with
Oh,
the
yeah.
titles in that second paragraph on the first page.
Yes, we got rid of those. If this is not approved, the town meeting authorizes the formation of a town seal design committee for the purpose of overseeing the design of a new town seal. So he just changed that syntax, okay? All right, we're good there. What time is it? All right, now, with that all said, you want to go back to part 4?
Sure.
That we tabled about 45 minutes ago?
so I just pasted in my suggestion and highlighted in yellow.
Okay.
Page 3, but although what I was bringing up was just the 1913 town seal recommendation was not currently backed up in the analysis portion, so trying to get something in the analysis portion to talk about that.
I see, okay, so aim for residents responding with interest. too. Okay.
You folks want to look at what he did. I'm sorry we can't put it up on the screen, but if you want.
We can just also just read it out loud.
Yeah,
So-
but I just thought you wanted to see it. Okay. So, Dan, you want to read it to us?
Sure. So what I wrote was 84 residents responded with interest in or openness to replacing the current town seal with the original Westborough town seal of 1913. Notably, respondents who introduced this idea came from all sides of the debate. Some suggested that the town revert to the original town seal because the current imagery is racially insensitive, while others who generally did not want to change the current seal offered the 1913 town seal as an option they would find acceptable. The original 1913 town seal was described by residents as simple and powerful, classy, simple to reproduce, neutral, and historic. Another resident commented that it would look great on clothing, rugs, and other items.
You know what, I would also make a suggestion, you just randomly stuck the two seals in the beginning.
Put
I
them
would
here?
put them here,
Okay.
I would put them here.
Mhm.
This makes much more sense,
Okay. All right.
and that sounds good.
Eric, Jordan, anything about those, any comments about what he said?
Where in the report would that go? 'Cause I'm looking at the document and I don't see it.
It's in section 4,
Okay.
page
No,
3, it's
okay.
highlighted in yellow.
Section
Do
4.
you want to look on my laptop?
Sure.
So just scroll.
Oh, good.
And I think that would be a good place to put the seals.
Okay.
both of them.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put one, again, put that in there right now
Mhm.
as a placeholder. I'll remember to put the other one in. Okay.
I see it here now.
All right.
Just thought I loaded on my phone.
All right, so you're all good?
Mhm.
All right. All right.
Do you want that in black and white or in color? The current one?
I would put it in color. I would say. All right. So it's 8:48. This has been very productive. It's been very, very productive. Okay? And I was thinking with the comment about the committee, how things get designed and everything. Wasn't there a line, somebody added, like, a camel is a horse
Yeah.
devised by,
Right,
drawn by a
right,
committee,
yes.
that's what I was thinking of when I said
Exactly.
that.
So if you could, when you get this updated, I think I have a shared link, but if you give me a shared link, I will start drafting. I will come up with some draft article language that the committee can review at their next meeting. And because what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to go back to the 1977 town meeting to see exactly what the article was. I think it went into a lot of detail describing it, but if we just say the 1913 seal, we can do that. So I will try to start drafting what I believe are the articles that will fulfill the recommendations of the committee.
You put them in.
And then I can talk about those at the next meeting.
All right. All right.
Just if you guys got a few minutes. So the way I see this playing out is that there will be an article to essentially, to hear the report of the Town Seal Review Committee. And that will be pretty much not much debate. It's not going to be to debate whether to change the town seal. It's going to be to hear the report. And that will give time for the vote, for you to have like a 10-minute presentation or so to present essentially a synopsis of this. And you can have PDFs of this sent out to the town mailing list. You can have copies of it to hand out at the town meeting. So hearing the report will be relatively non-controversial because it will just be to hear the report. And then I would imagine that a chunk of that report, once you've told the story of how you got there, is going to be explain the process. And the process is then going to be that there would be 2 other articles on the town meeting warrant. The first of which would be to see if the town will will revert its town seal to the 1913 seal or wording like that. And then the second article would be to see if the town will vote to authorize the moderator to create a town seal design committee, or whatever we're going to call it. And then part of your process would be to explain that this process is to give the town an act right here, right now option that doesn't take any time and money, and that if that article passes, then the committee's intent is to pass over the design committee one but that if the 1913 seal fails, the committee's intent is to go forward with that article. I think that's the clearest way to explain it, and as Phil said at the last meeting, the plastic bag bylaws were much more complicated, but people seem to follow it, and I try to explain it every step of the way, here's what you're doing. So that will explain why there'll be two articles that seemingly are in conflict, but they're on the warrant so they can both be acted upon, but that the committee's recommendation is to approve this one and pass over that one, and if that fails, they go forward. And I can explain that umpteen bazillion times to make sure all the voters understand it. But I think that's the simplest way to do it. And it's the clearest way that everybody will always know what to expect.
Is there any new business? Thank you, John. Then thank you very much for explaining.
Just one thing on
Yeah.
that point, John, what could we do here to set in motion to not be the article that's dealt with at 12:30 in the morning? I mean, I know that they come in and it's like,
Right.
so anything that you could recommend to us
Right, yeah, well, yes, well.
earlier than rather than
Right, well,
late?
what I've thought about, and
Yeah.
I mean, and I've not talked about this with Wendy because it's not committee business,
Yeah.
but Wendy and I, in our other roles,
Mhm.
have been talking about having electronic voting, and there's a few articles that I think may behoove the town, that if we do have electronic voting, it would behoove us to make sure that the articles that are most likely to need or want to count are acted upon early enough just in case the meeting slips into Tuesday night. And so the selectmen control the warrant of the order it's printed. So
Oh,
it's okay, the order is printed, but I think this committee and I could do, I'd say that we would like it to be early enough in the warrant that to make sure that it gets acted upon when electronic voting is in place. And then the alternative is that if it's not placed there, the moderator can entertain a motion to change the order of the articles, but it takes a 2/3 vote of the meeting present. So, but I think that due to the cost of, there's usually a mixture at these regularly scheduled October special town meetings, there's usually a mixture of sort of boilerplate, moving budgets around, doing things, and then there are things that sometimes are more likely to have discussion and, votes that would be closer to, yes or no. And those would be zoning articles. I think the library's vote is going to be up in terms of authorizing voting, for the library, and there's this, and those are the types of things that I would hope would be able to be held early enough that we have electronic voting in place. And so if the meeting was slow and it took till Tuesday night, that we would have these done with just in case the call for Wendy and I is to only have one night of voting. And that's something Wendy and I haven't talked about yet, but we've been discussing how much can we afford and what do we want to budget. So there's no, as with everything with town government, there's no surefire way to do it, but I think we can ask and probably get people to see the benefit of having it acted upon early. Don't you think so?
Yes.
That makes sense, right? I mean, I think it makes sense, and other steps, as the committee winds up its work, it's done. I always recommend you schedule a meeting before the select board and the advisory finance committee. The select board, just because they sort of kicked off the start of this committee, it gives you a chance to practice, summarizing the report and getting feedback and getting questions. And the advisory finance committee will be asked to make a recommendation on this, and it's always best to give them a chance to see what the feel of that is, because the 9 members of the finance committee sort of represent in some way some kind of microcosm of the town, and it's good practice. So I would suggest that, and then the committee could consider as part of its outreach going back to some of the people they contacted earlier to just say, hey, our work's done, here's the report, and all the things you did for the town email list or whatever to say, once the report is finalized and done, there's a way to get the report out so people know to expect it to be talked about at the October special town meeting.
Okay.
And I can help with all that.
Any new business for the committee?
I don't think so.
All right, so agenda for a next meeting and what we would need to do at the next meeting. John,
It sounds to me like, what I've heard is that having a vote on sort of what the final draft and then reviewing the draft articles that I helped write.
yeah, that would be the only thing we
That
have to
would
do,
We're going to have to put together a presentation.
Oh, right.
A presentation, what, with slides, you think?
I would,
Well, we're going to need to do presentations, as
Yeah,
John just
yeah,
said,
yeah.
for the selectmen, ideally for the select board, for the advisory finance committee, and ultimately that
Town meeting,
presentation
yeah, right.
would be the presentation at town meeting.
But that's, I mean, reading the report is the
Well,
presentation.
no, obviously, we have to finalize the report, and then there needs to be a presentation, so we still have like 2 steps.
What we present at the town meeting isn't going to be the report verbatim.
No,
Sure, but
It doesn't have to be, but.
it doesn't
Well,
have to
you
be.
know,
Typically you'd want to have PowerPoint, just like you did with the information session. You're going to want to summarize it into key points to make sure people know how you got there and where you're going. So,
So all right, so for the agenda for the next meeting, we'll accept the minutes from this meeting. If there's any committee correspondence, I don't think we will. One
we're
thing
not
we-
going to be reviewing that anymore, are we?
Well, what we did at the start is, if people had anything they wanted to say while
Okay.
they voted, we did that during this period of time tonight.
Okay.
you can
Okay,
just say open forum, that's what other
Yeah.
committees have, an open forum. If anybody
Open
shows up
forum,
and wants to speak,
okay.
you give them a couple minutes and then you're done.
Then
Review.
review.
a final report,
Yep.
and then review of the articles, the article proposals.
Review our proposals.
Okay.
Do we need to vote on the report?
Yeah. Yes, it should be, because I think you want to have a report that's been voted on, so you can have a recorded vote.
Review and vote on the report, and then review article proposals.
All right, and then the question is, when do you want to meet?
We're gonna have to set up a group, or somebody's gonna take responsibility for preparing
Oh, right, for
the
the presentation.
presentations.
Should we could at least start that in the next meeting, right? We could do, begin
Yeah, but that
drafting
should
the
be on the
presentation.
agenda, is what I'm saying.
Right. Begin drafting the presentation.
And the
Yes.
guide is, at town meeting, it's typically 10 minutes. So it's like a 10-minute presentation.
10-minute
Yeah.
presentation.
Just
Does that
summarize-
include questioning?
No,
Okay.
that's 10 minits just for the proponent to make their case, so that you would summarize the report.
Is that just presenting our report for the 10 minutes, but that's part of the warrant presentation? When the warrants are called, we
Yeah.
do a presentation, and
Somebody will
then,
make the motion, then I would give this committee 10 minutes to essentially,
and then
to
we
hear
get
the report,
questions?
yes, and-
Okay,
yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
okay, that's what I thought.
Okay. When do you want to meet?
this is always the fun part of the meeting.
I don't have my calendar.
So, I think we are better to try to get this finished. But that's just me, that's my, I would prefer to just, to have the work of this committee completed. I'm denoting there's probably a little bit of a fatigue here with us meeting. Or maybe I'm just speaking about myself. But with that said, we can try to meet again this month if you'd like. Would you rather wait and go into August? A number of us on this committee are involved in education, and as we get into late August, it will be very difficult for us to meet. So is it better for us to try to would you like to try to meet again in 2 weeks and try to get the work of this committee, that we might be able to get this finalized, that's my thinking.
I think the sooner the better.
What do you think?
Are Fridays ever an option for folks? Because my Mondays through Thursdays, all evenings,
Or tight.
yeah.
Yeah.
Fridays ever?
I can, in July, I can do that could
Yeah, it's not a
work on a
problem.
Friday.
So July the 22nd is my oldest son's birthday, so can we do the 29th?
It works for me.
I'm not feeling the love in the room.
Well, I don't have my calendar with me, so I think it's okay.
As long as it doesn't go too late.
So if we were to meet and Jordan, would you be able to be here still
Yeah, 7:30.
7:30 still?
Yeah.
I will send out the
Okay.
agenda.
And we will, okay, thank you. And,
So it's at the 29th?
The 29th, 7:30 PM.
And
Would
it
be a
doesn't
s-
sound February, so I think it's gonna be okay, but I don't know.
Would it be a
about
safe bet to say that this room would probably be available on Friday night at
Sure,
the 29th of July? Okay. All right. Is there any other business to come before this committee?
Should I go ahead and update the report to say we met 17 times?
Yeah, that's right, yeah, do that.
17 times, you're correct. If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
And a second, please.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning, please raise your hand. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.